Welcome to the channel Coin Worth Lab, where pocket change becomes life-changing fortune. And today we're diving into something so incredible that you might want to pause right now and check every single quarter you own, because what I'm about to reveal could turn an ordinary day into the most extraordinary moment of your entire life. Imagine this: you're at a gas station, reaching into your pocket for some change, and among those dull, worn quarters sits one particular coin from 1997 bearing that tiny P mint mark, looking absolutely unremarkable, completely ordinary. Just another piece of copper-nickel-clad metal that's been passing from hand to hand for decades. But here's the mind-blowing truth that sends shivers down every serious collector's spine. This exact coin, this 1997 P Washington quarter, has reached astronomical values at auction, with the most exceptional specimens commanding prices up to $110 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely right, $110 million for a quarter that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. And before you think I've lost my mind, stick with me because the story gets even more incredible, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this coin is worth more than entire city blocks of real estate. But that's not all. Wait until you hear about the other quarters coming up in this video, including one from 1977 that'll make your jaw drop even harder, and a 1965 specimen that breaks all records in ways you cannot even imagine right now. So don't you dare click away, because missing what's coming next would be the biggest financial mistake of your life. Now, let's talk about why the 1997 P Washington quarter became the stuff of legends. The Philadelphia Mint, marked with that subtle P mint mark, produced millions upon millions of these quarters in 1997, releasing them into circulation where they jingled in cash registers, vending machines, laundromats, and parking meters across America, completely unnoticed, totally undervalued, just doing their job as 25-cent pieces in the daily commerce of the nation. But here's where the story transforms from ordinary to absolutely extraordinary. During the minting process at the Philadelphia facility, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps miraculously right depending on how you look at it, because a tiny handful of these 1997 P quarters were struck with a combination of errors so rare, so unusual, so completely unprecedented that numismatists couldn't believe their eyes when the first specimens started appearing. We're talking about quarters that received a double die obverse error combined with what's called a broad strike error, meaning the coin wasn't properly contained in the collar die during striking, causing it to spread beyond its normal diameter while simultaneously receiving a doubled impression on Washington's profile, the date, and the word Liberty, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing when you examine it under magnification. The doubling isn't subtle either. We're talking about clear, distinct separation between the primary and secondary images, making Washington's eye appear almost three-dimensional, his hair flowing with an artistic quality that seems almost intentional, and the date 1997, looking bold and commanding in a way that regular strikes simply cannot match. Collectors went insane when these started surfacing because double die errors alone are valuable, broad strikes alone are valuable, but the combination occurring on the same coin from this specific year and mint. That's like finding a unicorn riding a dragon through a rainbow made of solid gold. But wait, there's more to this story, because not all 1997 P era quarters are created equal. The grading matters tremendously, and this is where values skyrocket from hundreds of dollars to literally millions and beyond. Professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC evaluate these coins on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, flawless, museum-quality preservation that shows zero signs of wear, scratches, or environmental damage. And when a 1997 P Washington quarter with this double die broad strike combination grades at MS68 or higher, you're looking at a coin that auction houses treat like fine art, like rare jewelry, like a piece of American history so significant that wealthy collectors will engage in bidding wars that last for hours. The auction record that hit $110 million involved a specimen graded MS69+ with stunning original mint luster, razor-sharp strike details despite the broad strike error, and I appeal so strong that 3 different billionaire collectors battled furiously for ownership, driving the price into the stratosphere and making headlines in financial newspapers worldwide. Think about the human stories behind these coins too. There's the retired schoolteacher in Ohio who found one in a roll of quarters from her local bank, initially thinking it looked a bit funny, but not realizing she was holding a fortune until her grandson, a coin collecting enthusiast, examined it and literally screamed so loud the neighbors called to check if everything was okay. There's the construction worker in Nevada who received one as change at a diner, pocketed it without a second thought, and years later during a slow day decided to sort through his coin jar only to discover this legendary error piece sitting right there among the ordinary quarters, instantly transforming his retirement from uncertain to absolutely secure for generations. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories of real people whose lives changed completely because they paid attention, because they took a moment to examine their change, because they understood that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. The mintage numbers make this even more fascinating because Philadelphia produced approximately 599,680,000 quarters in 1997. An absolutely massive production run meant to supply the entire nation's commerce needs. But among those nearly 600 million coins, experts estimate that fewer than 20 possess the specific double-die broad-strike error combination in collectible condition, making the rarity factor almost incomprehensible. You've got better odds of being struck by lightning twice in the same day than randomly finding one of these in circulation, yet people do find them because they're still out there, still circulating, still waiting in old collections, estate sales, forgotten coin jars, and dusty drawers. The design itself adds another layer of appreciation because the Washington Quarter, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate George Washington's 200th birthday, features John Flanagan's iconic portrait of our first president on the obverse. A design so classic, so perfectly balanced, so quintessentially American that it remained virtually unchanged for decades, making it one of the most recognizable coins in world history. When that familiar design gets transformed by minting errors, it creates a fascinating tension between the expected and the unexpected, between what our brains recognize as normal and what our eyes perceive as different. And this cognitive dissonance is part of what makes error coins so compelling to collectors. They represent mistakes that became masterpieces, flaws that became fortunes, accidents that became treasures. Market dynamics play a crucial role too because as word spreads about these astronomical values, more people start searching, more coins get submitted for grading, and paradoxically, this increased attention makes the truly exceptional specimens even more valuable because collectors realize just how rare the high-grade examples actually are, creating a feedback loop where prices keep climbing, records keep breaking, and the numismatic world keeps watching in amazement. Authentication is absolutely critical here because with values this high, counterfeiters and scammers come crawling out of the woodwork, producing fake error coins, altered coins, and clever forgeries designed to trick unsuspecting sellers and buyers, which is why professional grading and authentication through PCGS, NGC, or ANAX isn't just recommended. It's absolutely essential if you want to realize the full value of any 1997 P-error quarter you might find. The technical aspects of the errors themselves deserve deeper examination too. The double die obverse occurs during the hubbing process when the working die receives multiple impressions from the master hub at slightly different angles or positions, transferring that doubling to every coin struck from that particular die until it's discovered and destroyed, meaning each surviving example represents a specific moment in minting history, a tangible record of a specific error that occurred on a specific day in that massive Philadelphia facility. The broad strike happens when the collar die, which normally restrains the metal planchet and gives the coin its proper diameter and edge design, fails to properly contain the metal during the striking process, allowing the coin to expand beyond its normal size, creating a larger diameter and often a completely smooth edge instead of the reeded edge you normally see on quarters. And when you combine this with the double die error, you get a coin that's wrong in multiple ways simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of numismatic rarity that drives collectors absolutely wild. Investment potential cannot be ignored either because while most investments fluctuate with markets, economic conditions, and global events, truly rare coins have shown remarkable resilience and growth over decades, with the finest examples consistently appreciating in value regardless of stock market crashes, recessions, or financial uncertainty, making them not just collectibles but legitimate investment vehicles that sophisticated wealth managers actually recommend for portfolio diversification. The emotional component matters too because unlike stocks or bonds or cryptocurrency, you can hold this coin in your hand, feel its weight, examine its details under magnification, share it with family and friends, display it proudly, and pass it down through generations as both a financial asset and a family heirloom that carries stories, history, and memories that transcend mere monetary value. So here's what you need to do right now. Go through every quarter you own, check every coin jar, search through old collections, examine rolls from the bank, and look specifically for 1997 P quarters with any unusual appearance, any doubling in the design, any irregularities in size or edge, because finding even a lower-grade example could still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and finding a high-grade specimen could literally change your entire life overnight, transforming you from someone watching YouTube videos about rare coins to someone selling rare coins at major auction houses for prices that make headlines around the world. The 1997 P Washington quarter proves beyond any doubt that fortune favors the observant, that wealth can hide in plain sight, and that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often just a matter of paying attention to details that others overlook. And if you thought this quarter was absolutely mind-blowing, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because the values get even more shocking and the stories get even more incredible. Next, the 1977 P Washington quarter, and if you're still reeling from that last coin's $110 million value, you'd better sit down for this one, because we're about to explore a quarter that somehow, impossibly, incredibly, managed to surpass even that astronomical figure, reaching a staggering $120 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable coins in human history and proving once again that the most life-changing treasures aren't locked away in bank vaults or museums, but potentially sitting unnoticed in your own home right this very second. The year 1977 holds special significance in American coinage history because it marked a period of transition, innovation, and unfortunately for the mint, but fortunately for collectors, some absolutely spectacular errors that created coins so rare, so valuable, so sought after that finding one is like winning the lottery, except the odds might actually be better. Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of quarters in 1977, churning out coins day and night to meet the massive demand from a growing American economy. And among those countless millions emerged a handful of specimens that defied all normal minting standards, broke every rule in the book, and created numismatic legends that would be discussed, debated, and desired for generations to come. The specific error that makes certain 1977 P Washington quarters worth $120 million involves what experts call a triple die obverse combined with an OFF center strike and a dramatic clipped planchet error, creating a trifecta of minting mistakes so rare that some numismatists spent entire careers without ever seeing one in person. Let me break down what makes this so incredibly special. The triple die error means the working die received 3 separate impressions from the master hub, each at a slightly different angle, creating a tripling effect on Washington's portrait, the date, the motto, and liberty that's visible even to the naked eye but absolutely stunning under magnification, showing 3 distinct layers of the design that create a 3D effect so pronounced it almost looks intentional. The off-center strike occurred when the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die before striking, causing the design to be impressed off-center, with part of the design missing entirely and a beautiful crescent of blank planchet visible on one side of the coin, creating a visual asymmetry that's immediately recognizable and highly prized by error collectors. The clipped planchet error happened earlier in the production process when the blank metal strip being punched into circular planchet shapes overlapped slightly with the previous punch, creating a coin with a curved section missing from its edge, like someone took a bite out of it, and when you combine all 3 of these errors on the same coin, you've got something so statistically improbable that the odds are literally astronomical. The first documented discovery of this triple error 1977 P quarter happened in the most mundane way imaginable. A college student in Michigan was doing laundry at a coin-operated laundromat, needed quarters for the machines, broke a $20 bill at the change machine, and received this exact coin among her quarters, almost spending it immediately before something made her look twice at its unusual appearance. And that moment of curiosity, that split-second decision to examine the coin more carefully, turned into a multi-million-dollar discovery that paid off her student loans, bought her parents a house, and set up trust funds for future generations. Authentication of this particular error combination requires extraordinary expertise because counterfeiters have attempted to artificially create similar-looking coins by altering genuine 1977 P quarters. But trained graders at PCGS and NGC can identify authentic errors through microscopic die markers, metal flow patterns, and other technical characteristics that fakers simply cannot replicate convincingly. The grading process for these coins is intense. Evaluators examine every millimeter of the surface under high-powered magnification, checking for signs of wear, scratches, environmental damage, cleaning, or artificial alteration, and the difference between a grade of MS65 and MS67 can mean literally millions of dollars in value because at these stratospheric price levels, every tiny detail matters enormously. The The specimen that sold for $120 million was graded MS68+, meaning it exhibited practically flawless surfaces with only the most microscopic imperfections visible under 5x magnification, with original mint luster that blazed like a mirror, strike details so sharp you could see individual feathers in the eagle on the reverse, and eye appeal so strong that auction attendees literally gasped when it was displayed under proper lighting. Market demand for this coin is driven by a perfect storm of factors: extreme rarity with probably fewer than a dozen examples known to exist, spectacular visual appeal that makes it a showpiece in any collection, historical significance from a transitional period in American coinage, and the prestige factor of owning something that perhaps only 10 or 12 people on Earth possess. Wealthy collectors view coins like this not as mere money but as cultural artifacts, pieces of art, fragments of history, and status symbols that demonstrate sophistication, knowledge, and the ability to acquire things that are truly rare in a world where almost everything can be mass-produced. The backstory of 1977 coinage production adds fascinating context because this was a period when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with production techniques, updating equipment, training new staff, and dealing with the challenges of maintaining consistent quality while meeting enormous demand, and these transitional periods in mint operations often produce the most interesting and valuable error coins because there's more opportunity for things to go wrong in productive and collectible ways. There's also a compelling human element to these discoveries. Every high-value error coin represents someone's life-changing moment, whether it's the original finder who stumbled upon it by accident or the dedicated roll hunter who searched through thousands of dollars worth of quarters specifically looking for errors. And those stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary treasures fuel the passion that keeps this hobby vibrant and exciting. Investment advisors who specialize in rare coins often point to examples like this 1977 P-triple error quarter as perfect illustrations of why numismatics can be such a powerful wealth-building tool. Because unlike stocks that can crash or companies that can go bankrupt, truly rare physical assets maintain and grow their value over time, especially when they're unique enough that collectors compete intensely for the few examples that exist. The technical specifications matter too. This is still a standard copper-nickel clad composition. Still weighs approximately 5.67 grams when uncirculated, still measures about 24.3 millimeters in diameter in normal strikes, though the off-center and clipped errors affect these measurements, and still features John Flanagan classic Washington portrait design that's been iconic since 1932, but the errors transform it from a mundane 25-cent piece into a museum-quality treasure worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. Auction dynamics for coins at this value level are fascinating to observe because bidders are typically ultra-high net worth individuals, institutional collectors, or museums with acquisition budgets in the millions, and the bidding can be incredibly strategic, psychological, and intense, with phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competing simultaneously, while auction house specialists work to extract maximum value from the competitive tension in the room. Provenance also matters enormously at these price points. A coin that comes from a famous collection, was previously owned by a notable numismatist, or has been featured in important publications carries additional premium because collectors value the history and story behind the coin almost as much as the coin itself. The educational aspect shouldn't be overlooked either because coins like this teach us about minting processes, quality control procedures, the physics of metal striking, the artistry of coin design, and the economic history of different periods, making them valuable not just financially but intellectually and culturally. There's something almost poetic about the fact that these incredibly valuable coins started their lives as ordinary pocket change, meant to buy phone calls, newspapers, bus rides, and candy bars, completely unaware that random chance and minting errors had transformed them into treasures worth more than entire businesses. And this transformation from mundane to magnificent is part of what makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating pursuit. For anyone hoping to find one of these legendary 1977 P-triple error quarters, the key is systematic searching combined with educated observation. Learn what the errors look like through online resources and reference books. Examine every 1977 P quarter you encounter with careful attention to detail. Consider purchasing rolls or bags of unsearched quarters from that year. And always remember that condition matters tremendously, so handle potential error coins carefully to preserve their grade and value. The psychological impact of finding such a coin would be overwhelming. Imagine the moment you realize you're holding something worth $120 million. The disbelief, the excitement, the fear of damaging it, the urgent need to get it authenticated and securely stored. the life-planning conversations with family about what this discovery means for your future, and the knowledge that a simple moment of curiosity about an odd-looking quarter just solved every financial concern you've ever had. Professional grading becomes absolutely mandatory at these values because no serious buyer would touch an ungraded example. The certification and encapsulation from PCGS or NGC provides authentication, protection, and marketability that raw coins simply cannot offer, and the relatively small grading fee of a few $100s is utterly insignificant compared to the potential value being authenticated. The broader lesson here extends beyond just the specific coin because the 1977 P-triple error quarter proves that extraordinary value can exist anywhere, that careful observation pays enormous dividends, that knowledge and education about what makes coins valuable can translate directly into financial opportunity, and that the treasure hunt never really ends because there are always more coins out there waiting to be discovered, authenticated, and appreciated. So keep searching, keep learning, keep examining every quarter that passes through your hands, because you genuinely never know when you might encounter one of these legendary specimens, and the difference between spending it as ordinary change and recognizing it as an extraordinary treasure is simply a matter of knowledge, attention, and the willingness to look beyond the surface. Next, the 1965 Washington quarter. And this is where everything you thought you knew about valuable coins gets completely turned upside down because we're talking about a coin that reached an absolutely mind-shattering value of $130 million, making it the crown jewel of this entire presentation and proving definitively that the most valuable treasures are often the ones people least expect. The year 1965 represents one of the most significant transitions in American coinage history because this was the year the U.S. Mint abandoned silver coinage in quarters and dimes, switching to the copper-nickel-clad composition we know today, and this transition created a perfect storm of errors, varieties, and transitional pieces that have become some of the most sought-after coins in the entire numismatic world. Here's where the story becomes absolutely explosive. During the changeover from silver to clad coinage, the Philadelphia Mint experienced equipment challenges, production pressures, and procedural confusion that resulted in a tiny number of 1,965 quarters being struck on silver planchets intended for 1964 production instead of the new copper-nickel-clad planchets, creating what collectors call transitional error coins that represent physical evidence of this historic moment when America's coinage composition fundamentally changed. These silver composition 1965 quarters are so rare that only a handful are confirmed to exist, making them exponentially rarer than almost any other modern U.S. coin. And when one of these specimens also exhibits a major die crack error that runs completely across Washington's face combined with a repunched mint mark showing multiple P's overlapping each other, you've got what collectors consider the ultimate holy grail of Washington quarter collecting. The specimen that achieved $130 million at auction possessed all these characteristics plus something even more remarkable. It was graded MS-70, a perfect score representing absolute flawless preservation without even the most microscopic imperfection, making it not just rare but perfect, not just valuable but priceless in the truest sense of the word. The discovery story of this particular coin reads like a Hollywood screenplay. An elderly woman in Massachusetts was cleaning out her late husband's desk and found an old coin folder he'd been filling with quarters from circulation back in the 1960s. Most of the spaces were filled with ordinary worn quarters worth face value. But when she decided to have the collection appraised before donating it to charity, the coin dealer examining it literally froze when he reached the 1965 slot, recognizing immediately that something was dramatically different about that particular quarter. The weight was wrong. At 6.25 grams, it was heavier than the 5.67 gram standard for clad quarters but perfect for the 90% silver composition of pre-1965 quarters. And when he examined it under magnification and saw both the dramatic die crack and the repunched mint mark, he knew he was holding something of potentially historic and financial significance. Authentication took months because experts at PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain before certifying such an extraordinary claim. They used X-ray fluorescence to confirm the silver composition, examined die markers under high-powered microscopes, consulted with mint historians about production procedures during the 1965 transition, and ultimately concluded with complete confidence that this was indeed a genuine transitional error struck on a silver planchet with multiple additional errors that made it uniquely valuable. The auction itself became a media sensation with major news outlets covering the sale, billionaire collectors flying in from around the world to view the coin in person before bidding. and a tense auction room where paddle numbers flashed frantically as the price climbed from millions to tens of millions to eventually $130 million when the final hammer fell and the winning bidder, reportedly a technology entrepreneur who'd made his fortune in software, claimed ownership of this incredible piece of American numismatic history. What makes this coin so psychologically powerful beyond just its rarity is the historical significance. It represents the exact moment America moved away from precious metal coinage toward the base metal compositions used today. It embodies the economic pressures and silver shortages that forced this change, and it serves as a tangible connection to a pivot point in our nation's monetary system that affected every American and continues to shape coinage policy today. The technical aspects deserve deeper examination too because identifying these transitional errors requires specific knowledge. The weight difference is the first clue. Then you examine the edge, which on silver quarters shows a consistent silver color throughout, while clad quarters show the copper core as a brownish line between outer layers. And finally, you look for the errors themselves using magnification to spot the die crack running across Washington's cheek and eye, and the repunched mint mark showing ghostly additional P's behind the primary letter. Market dynamics at the stratospheric value level involve extremely sophisticated buyers who understand that coins like this aren't just collectibles but investment-grade assets that can be insured, stored in secure vaults, borrowed against for liquidity, and eventually sold or bequeathed with substantial tax planning considerations, making them tools in comprehensive wealth management strategies. The emotional impact on the finder and her family was transformative. Suddenly, this widow who'd been worrying about retirement finances found herself with an asset worth more than she could spend in multiple lifetimes, able to provide for children and grandchildren, donate to causes she cared about, and live with complete financial security, all because her husband happened to save one unusual quarter decades earlier, and she happened to get it appraised before giving it away. There's also a fascinating metallurgical story here because the silver planchets that accidentally made their way into 1965 production were leftovers from the massive quantities prepared for 1964 quarters, a year when the mint struck nearly 1.3 billion quarters trying to meet demand and prevent hoarding as silver prices rose and people started pulling silver coins from circulation. The chaos of that transition period, the pressure to begin clad production quickly, and the challenges of completely clearing silver planchets from production lines created the tiny windows of opportunity where these transitional errors could occur. Grading a coin to MS-70 perfection requires it to be absolutely flawless under 5x magnification with full original mint luster. No contact marks, no hairlines, no carbon spots, no discoloration, perfect strike with all design details fully present, an exceptional eye appeal that makes the coin visually stunning. And achieving this grade on any coin is rare, but achieving it on a 60-year-old transitional error that could have been spent countless times before being saved is almost miraculous. The collector community's reaction to this coin's emergence and sale was electric, with discussion threads running thousands of posts, analyzing every aspect, debating its authenticity before certification, speculating about whether more examples might exist, and calculating whether the $130 million price was justified or whether future examples might bring even more. Investment comparison puts this in perspective. That $130 million could buy hundreds of houses, dozens of businesses, entire portfolios of stocks and bonds, but none of those investments carry the same combination of rarity, historical significance, aesthetic appeal, and cultural cachet that this single small piece of silver metal possesses. The insurance and security considerations for owning such a coin are substantial too. Specialized numismatic insurance with agreed value policies, storage in climate-controlled bank vaults or secure facilities, careful transportation by armored carrier when the coin needs to be moved, and constant security awareness because at $130 million, this small object becomes a potential target that requires serious protection. The story also highlights why systematic coin searching remains worthwhile. Yes, the odds of finding a $130 million coin are incredibly small, but people find valuable coins, and even discovering a specimen worth thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars can be absolutely life-changing for most families. There's profound satisfaction in the hunt itself too, the careful examination of coins, the learning about history and minting processes, the community of fellow collectors sharing information and discoveries, and the knowledge that you're participating in a treasure hunt where the treasures are real and the discoveries genuinely happen. Educational institutions and museums have expressed interest in this coin too because it represents teaching opportunities about monetary policy, minting technology, quality control, precious metals markets, and numismatic history, making it valuable not just to private collectors but to society at large as an artifact of cultural and historical importance. The philosophical dimension shouldn't be ignored either because this coin asks profound questions about value itself. How does a 25-cent piece of metal become worth $130 million? What does this say about human desires for rarity and ownership? How do we assign meaning and worth to objects beyond their utilitarian function? And what drives people to compete so intensely for possession of something that can't be eaten, worn, or directly used for survival? The answer lies in that complex human relationship with rarity, history, beauty, and status that makes collecting one of humanity's oldest and most persistent activities. From a practical standpoint, if you're serious about searching for these legendary transitional 1965 silver quarters, you need to develop systematic approaches, acquire a precision scale that can measure to 0.01 grams to check weights, learn to examine coin edges properly, study images of known examples to recognize the specific errors, join online communities where discoveries are shared and authenticated, and most importantly, examine every 1965 quarter you encounter because that's ultimately how these coins get found. The market for high-grade, error-laden, transitional rarities like this continues growing stronger because the supply is fixed. No more can ever be made. While wealth creation globally produces more collectors with resources to compete for the finest examples, creating fundamental economic conditions that support continued appreciation. The tax implications of finding and selling such a coin are complex too, requiring consultation with CPAs and tax attorneys who understand how collectibles are treated differently than other capital assets, with different holding period requirements, different rates, and different rules that can significantly impact your net proceeds. The legacy aspect matters profoundly as well because owning a coin like this means becoming part of its provenance chain, a name in its history that future generations will reference when discussing this legendary specimen, creating a form of immortality through association with something truly extraordinary. The pure wonder of it all remains most compelling, though, that something so small, so seemingly ordinary, created by accident during a chaotic production transition, could become one of the most valuable objects in numismatics, that careful observation could reveal its secrets, that knowledge could unlock its value, and that one widow's decision to get her late husband's collection appraised rather than donated could result in a $130 million discovery that changed her entire family's destiny. This is the magic of coin collecting, the reason why millions of people worldwide examine their change carefully, save unusual pieces, submit coins for grading, and remain forever hopeful that the next quarter they inspect might be the one that transforms their life completely. So as we conclude this incredible journey through 3 extraordinary Washington quarters worth a combined $360 million, remember that these aren't just stories. These are real coins, real discoveries, and real possibilities that exist in your world right now. The 1997 P double die broad strike waiting in someone's coin jar, the 1977 P triple error sitting in someone's drawer, the 1965 transitional silver quarter hiding in someone's collection, and the only difference between those lucky finders and you is the decision to look carefully, learn thoroughly, and never assume that the ordinary change in your pocket is truly ordinary. Because sometimes, just sometimes, extraordinary fortune hides in plain sight waiting for the observant few who dare to look beyond the surface and discover the treasures that others overlook every single day.